In this third and final section around resilience and stress, I wanted to just bring up something about different types of stress responses, because I think this is a really useful model to understand. There's a lot of people out there who think stress is a negative, and traditionally we can understand why. If you look at the work of people like Bradford Cannon and Hans Selye, who were the forefathers of stress response, what they were looking at was either people who'd suffered what was called shell shock in the First World War, what we now know to be post-traumatic stress disorder, or in the case of Selye, doing very stressful things to lab rats. You were looking at an extreme response to stress, and this has set sort of the baseline for what stress is like, or what we consider stress to be. But stress is actually a natural response. And it's a response that helps to keep us safe. It's a response that is deeply useful in many, many places. And the thing that's come out over recent years is that there isn't just one stress response. It isn't just fight or flight. Fight or flight is a very useful response in the natural environment. It's questionable how useful that response is in the work environment. But we do find other responses that are really, really useful within work environments. So one of the responses is the challenge response. And the challenge response is different chemically to the fight or flight response. The challenge response has something called dehydroepiandrosterone present. It serves the purpose of allowing the brain to be more active within the stress response. It enables oxygen and the energy that's being pumped around the body in this heightened state to be utilized by the brain. It enables us to think more clearly under stress. This response is triggered by a far subtler thing. There was a fantastic study done in one of the American universities where they told a group of students that when they go into an exam and they feel the heart rate increase, they feel the breath change, this is the body preparing the brain to think more clearly. And then they monitored the results, and they found that the people who had had that little bit of information changed their results. Not only in that one exam, but over the course of the whole time they were there. So we can learn to activate ourselves into different types of stress responses. Another stress response that you look at is something that is classified as the tend-and-befriend response. And the tend-and-befriend response is similarly a really, really useful response. It's the thing that happens when you suddenly feel yourself being disproportionately brave, disproportionately strong in order to help somebody else. And this again is different from the fight or flight response. It has a different chemical structure. You start to talk about substances such as dopamine, serotonin. You start to talk about reward hormones. You start to talk about things that make us more socially acceptable, more socially accepting. And this response is also a very useful response in dangerous situations. Now the thing, without going into too much detail about these responses, because it's only a short video, the thing that is useful about these is that if you recognize that you're going into the challenge response, you've walked into an exam, you know that you can use that response while you're in the exam, and when you leave the exam, it's gone. You can drop it. When you talk about tend and befriend, you see somebody in danger, you help them out, you drop the response afterwards. You'll probably be flushed with dopamine, you'll probably be feeling great about yourself, but the response is now on its way out. When we're simply in fight or flight response, we don't recognize when to stop because we don't recognize that trigger that starts it. So the fight or flight response is one of those responses that it's very difficult to let go of because it's very difficult to recognize how it started or why it's a sensible response. So a lot of the work that I'm interested in is how do you reprogram yourself? How do you help people to understand how to not go into fight or flight, but change that response into a challenge response, into a tend and befriend response? How do you actually utilize stress in a more effective way? Not only to enable you to use this fantastic resource to work more effectively, but also to allow yourself to actually step back from it more quickly. And we find that one of the key pieces within this comes back to this idea of awareness, comes back to this idea around emotional intelligence, and actually allowing yourself to recognize what's going on so you can allow yourself to come back into this level. So to find out more about this, please contact us at The Green Chair, look me up on LinkedIn, drop me a line.